Hello and welcome to the Dance Yourself Brave show, where we get real about the struggles dancers face, from confidence battles to self-doubt, and how dance has the power to make us braver, stronger, and more unstoppable in every area of life. I'm your host, Mariana Santos, founder of Brazili Fitness. And whether you're a seasoned dancer, a dance instructor, dance lover, or someone who's always wanted to dance but feels a little intimidated to start, this show is for you. Expect honest conversations, inspiring stories, and simple ways to bring more dance into your life, whether that's in the studio, on stage, or right in your living room. And if you're a dance instructor, we've got you covered with tips on how to grow your dance business, attract more students, and create a bigger impact through your passion for movement. So if you're ready to step out of your comfort zone, own your movement, and dance yourself brave, let's do this. Hello and welcome to the Dance Yourself Brave show. I'm your host, Mariana Santos, founder of Brazili Fitness, and I'm so excited because I have Heather Jean Wilson here with me today. She's a professor, teaching artist, and founder creator of Ba Ba Ballet and Grunt, if you understand, which she'll explain to us so we do understand. During the course of her career, she has studied, performed, taught, guested, and lectured, founded schools and companies, created works, formulated programming, built curricula, and implemented outreach services. Inventive teaching methods, playful leadership, and contagious energy are her hallmarks. Heather has had the privilege of ushering students to dance in classical and contemporary dance companies, Broadway, sports, and beyond. Wow, you have done a lot, Heather. I'm so excited to hear all about your journey. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Well, we're all about sharing the behind the scenes of the dance world, right? Because I think that sometimes, like, when people are interested in learning how to dance, especially as adults, right, it can be a little bit intimidating. As we get older, we become more fearful, right? Like, we kind of lose our brave, right? So this podcast is all about showcasing the struggles that happen behind the scenes of dance, right? And so that we realize, like, you know what, they're just normal people. And so let's start with your story. Just tell me about yourself and how you got started with dance.
Sure. I'm going to try and put it in a nutshell, although that's a long time to put into a little nutshell.
Take your time. No rush.
Well, I am one of 5 children. So I think my parents put me in ballet probably just to get rid of me for 45 minutes because, they needed a little space there. But no, they were actually very adventurous people, and they were really into exposing us to all different kinds of activities and adventures. So definitely lent to who I am today, very much.
That's
so.
awesome.
But they put me into just the dance school down the street. It was Les Petites Dance Academy, but luckily it was owned by a classical dancer, and she gave me some good training. I didn't really know that I was getting good training. I was just, a 4-year-old just out and about. But at age 9, she came up to me at the bar. I remember I was really good at a pas mal during ronde-jambs, like a weird memory that, what do you remember from when you're 8 to 9? She said, "Do you want to go to the Joffrey?" And, you're like, I don't know, maybe what's the Joffrey?
Is it
Sure.
fun?
I don't know. I'm just going to go, whatever. I'll take a trip with you. So she brought a couple students to the Joffrey, and that's where I got the bug for dance. I walked into that space, and I was like, it was so magical. It was so big and grandiose. And even though at that point there's people smoking and having coffee in the lobby, and it was a different time, but it was really awesome. So I got the bug, and my parents then had to search for a new school because I was outgrowing the little school on the corner. And they brought me to Princeton Ballet. And then by the time I was 18, I was dancing at Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers. I was running over to Princeton to do their dance company. I was running into New York and taking class at David Howard's and Broadway Dance Center. And I was all over the place. And I even began teaching by that time because I had to pay for my own classes, my own schooling. But, and then by the time I was 20, I was on this path to be a classical ballet dancer. I was going to be in New York. I was going to be a member of ABT or SAB. And I remember walking down 42nd Street and just stopping and thinking, I don't want to live in the city.
Mm,
And that was going to
interesting.
be an issue because to be in one of these big companies, I was going to have to live in a city.
Yeah.
So I took a big turn. And since I was teaching and I was enjoying teaching, I thought, well, I guess I could be a teacher. And if I'm going to be a teacher, I should open my own school. I'm not going to teach for somebody else.
Mhm.
And I opened a school. I started a nonprofit company and I actually danced with my company. So I was
Wow.
teaching and dancing and
How old
uh,
were you at that point?
I opened the school at 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a ride, and it was such a fun adventure. I had so many great guest artists come in, and the dancers were just gorgeous. And there was a lot of collaboration that went on with different teachers that I hired to come in. And we're out in on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We're right on the Delaware River, so it's
Okay.
these little hamlets, these little tiny towns that are like artist communities. So it was a good place to be. It was very homey and, like I said, very artistic, a lot of supporters of the arts. And my little company was at the professional level. So I was still getting the exposure to dance and learning to teach. And
Mhm.
it was
So
great. It was a
cool.
great, great chapter.
That's awesome. Well, so that's from age 4 to 25, right?
Yes.
So, like when you kind of gloss over things, it seems like, oh, everything was super, everything flowed, right? But I'm sure you had lots of struggles, right, along the way. So
Yeah.
tell me about kind of like the behind the scenes of like, what kind of hurdles did you have to jump over and all of that.
Yeah. There's so many to pick.
Yeah.
As dancers, we're so resilient, and
Mhm.
I think dancers are also have like, I'm gonna call it a driven side, like a get out of my way kind of
Mm.
personality. I'm not gonna call it stubborn. We're
Mhm.
driven and we just forge on ahead because there's
Yeah.
all kinds of struggles along the way. Like,
Mhm.
um, I mean, I think of two kind of subject matter there. Like I had physical struggles as a student because I didn't have great turnout. I didn't have great feet. I
Mhm.
tell my current students now at the university because we have such an array of levels
Mhm.
and they come from different genres. I have hip hop dancers that are taking ballet for the first time, or I have
Mhm.
professional ballerinas taking my class. But I tell them, you have to find your niche. You have
Mhm.
to find your strengths and figure out how to feature them because I didn't have turnout. I didn't have feet. I mean, that's all you need for ballet is turnout and feet, So, but I had my niche was port de bras, my arms, and
Mhm.
musicality. I knew how to play with musicality.
Mhm.
Um, I remember being I was a guest of at a company and I was Sugar Plum Fairy. And I remember one of the students' dads was working backstage and afterward he looked at his daughter, he says, now that's what you call style. And I took that as such a compliment because I knew he was referring to my musicality and my artistry, which
Mhm.
kind of covered up the fact that I didn't have the feet and the
Mhm.
turnout. But I got turned down at, School of American Ballet, a lot of auditions where they do at that time they needed the tools.
Mhm.
And they were like, nope, you don't have feet, just turn back around and go. But
Yeah,
luckily in this day and age, we have companies. There are so many companies and they take everyone. There's a company for everyone. So as long as you feature what you're strong at and you forge ahead, then there's a company for you. There's a place for you, I feel.
that's awesome. And what about, so that's, some physical struggles, but what about maybe some like, starting your own business and all of that? Like walk me through that because we know that, people who are passion led, right, and they follow that path, right, to start a company doing that as something they love, usually they're surprised along the way. We're like, oh, like I have to do all this other stuff, like the marketing, the admin, all
Yeah.
this stuff that we didn't necessarily want to do. It's like, can I just dance the whole time? So how about let's talk about that side for
Yeah,
maybe someone who's
I was
interested.
thinking, I'm like, oh, when you would ask the question, I'm like, all right, well, there were the physical limitations that you have to overcome. But then I was like, how about like the whole changing paths idea?
Yeah.
Because I changed paths so many times. And
Mhm.
like within owning the school, at the same time, I got married and I have 4 kids, and I had
Wow.
4 kids in 5.5 years.
Oh my
So
You're my hero. Like I have one and I cannot imagine having more.
yeah, and it was like they were like boom, boom, boom. I had all these kids, and unfortunately, my partner and I weren't on the same page, and I divorced when my youngest just turned 1. So here I have this school, and this company, and I'm trying to teach with 4 little ones under 5 years old. And I'm like, what do I do with them? I'm bringing them to the studio. I have one in the front pack and one in the backpack and one in the playpen. But I was not upholding the level of professionalism at my school that, was being true to me. And I'm
Mhm,
like, I can't do this. So there was like the whole struggle of having to close the school.
mhm.
And then um, I opened a little clothing boutique, and I started a photography business. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, you just like are constantly
Pivoting.
recreating
Yeah.
yourself. And
Yeah.
so, and then there was the whole falling back in love with dance and teaching, because for a while there I was like, "Oh, who am I?" And do I still love it? Do I still want to do it? My priority was being a mom, and a lot of dancers have to juggle that, as you know. So it's a huge juggle.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
actually,
there was that whole, what am I going to do now? And but that's when I started building my curriculum. So
mhm,
uh, I had my friend, he's now my partner, but he was like, you have this great preschool program. You need to give this to the rest of the world. Like, and I was like, well, I thought of writing a book. And he's like, there's the online world there. You should create a curriculum that you can teach it online, and offer a subscription. And I was like, I can do that.
yeah.
But yes, we can do that. So
Yes.
yeah, there was a lot
We
of
can do
really,
everything.
yeah, I think as an artist, and as a human, we kind of feel like we're stuck on a certain path and we need to stay on that path, but we don't realize that we can change directions at any time. I have so these my children, they're now older and they're college age. And my daughter, her biggest challenge right now being a sophomore in school is that she keeps changing what she wants her major to be. And I'm
Mm,
like, you don't have to, you can take different roads. You can
yeah.
change your path at any time. And I think people are kind of stuck on this clock that they have to be somewhere by a particular year or by a particular time. And
Mhm.
so I'm teaching my daughter and teaching my students that you can change direction. If you think you want to be a teacher, or maybe you'll turn and you'll be a performer, or maybe you'll turn and be an administrator, maybe you'll be a coach. You don't know, and you have to be open to those different adventures.
I completely agree. And I want to go back to a word that something you said towards the beginning. You said dancers are resilient, right? And I would like to kind of focus in on that a little bit because, sometimes people think, well, okay, they're dancers. They're just born that way. But in my opinion, I think you become resilient because you dance, right? And so I want to
Yes.
talk about how, all those struggles you face, like how did that shape you as a person and how did that affect your life? So we saw how, you're able to like shift really quickly and stay focused.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it helps us to be, well, I don't know. I wonder if I just wrote a blog post about dancers' brains, and it was very interesting. There was an experiment that was done with some dancers from Ballet West, and they've put this doohickey on them, and they watched their brain waves. And they realized that the majority of dancers have overactive brain activity.
Oh,
And I thought it was
interesting.
really interesting because I'm like, it's kind of the chicken before the egg kind of thing.
Hmm.
Do we as dancers just automatically have that flexibility and that resiliency and that like just energy to keep going so that we're almost equipped to jump those hurdles and to make those changes? Or does studying dance give us those skills? You know what I mean? So it could be
It's
either
tough.
way. I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both, but I do find that dancers, it definitely shapes you and fine tunes those skills of being flexible, being able to overcome, just from overcoming that you can't finish a combination and you
Mhm.
tripped up in your petit allegro to competing and performing and maybe falling on stage and then, going into bigger things where maybe a business fails or, it doesn't feel so good and you don't feel that you're succeeding, but we definitely get back up. My mom has a saying. She's like, "That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. I'm fine. I'm up."
Yeah. I
So it
love
definitely
that. I
shapes
love that.
us.
And what's something that you wish all your students knew about you? Something that maybe they would be surprised to hear about you.
Uh, that's a hard question because I'm a very open book.
Okay.
So I think my students know everything about me. Um,
Okay.
no, but there's some odd things and some, just kind of fun. I ride a motorcycle.
Oh, very cool.
Yes. So my Facebook name is Ballerina Biker. So I'm legit.
Oh, wow. Actually, now I remember that when I saw that
Yeah.
coming in. Yeah.
And a lot of my students are always like, "You ride a motorcycle? They're like, are you going to ride it to class?" I'm like, "I can. When the weather gets
Yeah.
nice, I'll ride it." Um, I was a competitive archer.
Oh.
A lot of them don't know that about me, which is very kind of parallel to dance because it's a discipline. It requires a physicality, but it also requires, a mental focus. And I actually use archery as a lot of lessons in dance on balance because
Interesting.
it's kind of the same thing. You're zoning in on one spot and it's an
Mhm.
extreme focus. So that's kind of fun. What else do they need to know about me? I think one thing that it would be nice if they knew is I think you touched on this at the beginning of our podcast that we are just as afraid as they are.
Mhm.
Um, I had a student the other day. I was speaking of Petit Allegro work. I was
Mhm.
teaching her Petit Allegro, and we always break it down and then we do it at one tempo. But then I bring it up and I call it the speed challenge. And I'll turn on a faster piece of music and they have to do it up to tempo. And
Mhm.
as I walked around the back of the classroom, this one girl was looking at me with this concern in her eyes. And I'm like, "What's the matter?" And she's like, "This is where I really just get so afraid."
Mhm.
And I was like, I was like, "Well, I'm afraid too." I said, "I
Mhm.
get afraid of every Petit Allegro. I get afraid." I said, "But just dive in and make the mess."
Mhm.
And that goes along with the whole resiliency of dancers and the whole driven side. It's like, yes, we're afraid, but we learn to manage our fear. It's not that it disappears. So a lot of,
Exactly.
it doesn't matter if you're 54 or you're 14, we all
Mhm.
still have that same fear in us. But
Mhm.
as older people, we've at least gotten the tools to kind of management. And as educators, we have to now give that to our students. So
Yeah.
the way I teach them is I'm like, make the mess. It's going to be
Mhm.
a diamond in the rough. It's going to turn into something, but definitely don't refrain from taking the chance.
Mhm. And that's so powerful because we can do hard things, right? And I think that sometimes we forget that, or we just, I don't know if you notice this, but I think that with the younger generations coming, growing up with all this technology, they've gotten used to things just being like easy or like simpler, right? Just you want food, you can have it delivered at your door within like 20 minutes. And that instant gratification can be troublesome, right? Because we forget that the things that are really worthwhile in life are those things that we jump like head first and we don't know what's going to happen, and that journey, and it's not like the end result, right? It's like it's that up and down that you allow yourself to go through to get to that result. And
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
we just need to allow ourselves to like jump in, make the mess, like you
Yeah.
said, and see what
Yeah.
comes of that, right? And there's beauty in not knowing all the answers, and just kind of letting that be okay is
Yeah, I
super
agree. And I
important.
tell them, I said, you're never the kind of the cool thing about dance is that you're never going to attain perfection. There's
Mhm.
always something to improve on, which
Mhm.
keeps it interesting. I think that's
Yeah.
why we all stay in love with it because there's always somewhere to go with it.
Mhm.
And so
I agree. Okay, so I'm sure you've worked with lots of amazing students and you have incredible success stories, but I want you to pick one, maybe something that's recent or one that really stuck out to you the most, and just tell me, like, what happened in their life and how, that made you feel and all of that good stuff.
oh man, it's I'm proud of all of them and it is amazing. I do this little thing on my social media. It's Where Are They Now Wednesday. And I love like going back and seeing where they are now and kind of
Oh,
featuring
very
it. And
cool.
yes, I have those who have become Rockettes. And I have one of my students is an Eagles dancer. So she was just in New Orleans
Oh,
at the Super Bowl,
wow.
all these exciting things as dancers. And then also I feature students that are doctors or therapists or moms.
Mhm.
All of these jobs are rewarding and they all deserve to be honored, with their accomplishments, all of these accomplishments.
I
So
agree.
yeah, there's like picking one is hard. I will mention one that I just found out about. I teach at a school that I actually taught at when I was 20.
Oh.
And this year I was taken on as a contractor to teach there for the year. And the school has now changed hands. So the owner that I worked for, years ago is now her daughter has taken over the business. But I was talking to the old owner. She came in to say hi and she had dug out some pictures from when I taught there. And I was looking at the girls and I said, oh, where is this one now? And she's like, oh my gosh. She said, she writes for the New York Times Magazine. She's a visiting professor at Princeton University.
Wow.
And she was a finalist in the Pulitzer. So she's lives in
Wow.
Istanbul. Yeah, she's this writer. She wrote a book. And I'm like, jaw drop. Like,
Yeah.
wow. I can't wait to feature her on my Where Are They Now Wednesday.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's just so amazing to see the array of accomplishments that the students get. I will say, I think that the daily little accomplishments that happen are probably the most rewarding.
Mhm.
And it could be as simple as having a student message me before my university class and they're
Mhm.
like, I'm not really feeling well. I was up late. I had to study for finals. I don't know if I'm going to make it to class. And I always kind of push them. I'll say,
Mhm.
I understand. I understand if you can make it to even part of class, if you can even make it over to observe class,
Mhm.
I'll be happy to give you full credit. I just want you to be there. You'll learn something from observing. And I'm so happy when they actually do show up. And
Mhm.
then you see them sitting, and then you see them start to stand up, and
Mhm.
then you see them giving themselves some plies in the corner. And
Mhm.
then by the end of the class, they're full on taking class. And then later, I get a message saying, Heather, thank you for forcing me to take class. They're
Mhm.
like, I felt so much better at the end of class. And that is the stuff that warms my heart because, again, like the power of dance and
Mhm.
taking, whatever your problems are that day, whatever's bothering you, and just focusing you and making it all go away and
Mhm.
brightening your day and making you feel a lot better.
That is, I mean, I got chills. That's to me, that's what it's all about. And I think, especially because I work with adults, or like I work a lot with college students now. and maybe they've never been exposed to dance growing up. And like what I try to tell them is like, when you take a class, it's not because you need to become a professional dancer or you need to be up on a stage or anything like that. But I'm sure that you have something in your heart that you feel like you were called to do. I firmly believe that we're all born with a purpose, right? That is meant for us. And sometimes that dream or that little voice seems scary, right? You're like, okay, like I know that's what I want to do, but how can I do that? That's so big.
Yeah.
That's so like beyond my resources, right? And I firmly believe that dance can be that tool that builds your confidence and helps you find your brave, right? And realize,
Yes.
like, you know what? Like, I did that dance class. It was freaking hard in the beginning, but look at me now, like months later, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
if I could do that with dance, why can't I do that as a writer, as, a doctor or anything else? And
Yeah.
that's what I feel like the magic is with dance, right? It's just building that resilience, that belief in yourself that you can do hard things. I think, like you said, it's like the day to day things that are more powerful. Of course, it's cool when we hear stories about like, oh, she's dancing at the Super Bowl, and that's great too, because that's her path, right? But your path could be something completely different, and that's just as amazing. So I
Yes.
love that. So, what do you think, like in a nutshell, what do you think is the impact that you're making in the world with dance?
Oh,
And with all your numerous projects. So there's a lot.
oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I, I would like to think that, my curriculums are helping people teach preschool and that Grunt if you understand, which, um, to put that one in a nutshell, uh, I, as a teacher, and I'm sure all teachers do this, you're just like on this mission to help them to understand. And I would come up with these kooky visualizations to help with every aspect of ballet. And one day, all of my students were like, Miss Heather, they called them Heatherisms. They're like, how many Heatherisms do you have? And I was like, I don't know. So we grabbed a thing of sticky notes and I handed them out and they all started putting down the little visualizations and we put them all on the mirror. And then by the end, we were like, we have 75 of these. And then I went home like, I need to write a book.
Yes.
And again, in this day and age, instead of doing a physical book, these visualizations were easier to show people in video format.
Mhm.
So I created Grunt If You Understand, which is a video library of visualizations for dance, for every aspect of dance,
It's
from
amazing.
technique to artistry. So yeah, I mean, I hope that the curriculums are helpful. But I still think my impact on the world is going to be of those students and not necessarily the technique I've given them, but just like we were speaking of, the belief in themselves. I think I hope that I can pass on the belief that they can do anything and to not be afraid, or at least to work through their fears
Mhm.
and to believe in themselves. To kind of back up on our last topic, but then into
Mhm.
this topic, we had auditions at the university the other day for the dance program. And there was a student who came in and she was late. She was driving from Manhattan out to PA and she couldn't find the university and she got there late. So at the end of the audition, which they had to take ballet, modern, and jazz, and then we have these little interviews with the parents if they have any questions with the families. So family after family, they come in, and then finally I'm realizing that the hallway is empty, but the girl who was late came in by herself, and I'm looking for parents following her, and it's just her. So she
Oh.
came over and she sat down and she started to explain to us. She says, I'm a lot older than your current students. And I hadn't noticed,
Mhm.
I don't know, she's a dancer like the rest of the dancers. You don't
Yeah.
see age, you just see dancers. And she says, I'm 28. I am in the Army Reserves. I went to the reserves and learned IT. I work in IT. She's like, but I was a dancer up through my teenage years before I went into the reserves. And I can't shake this feeling that I need to do something with dance. She's like, I already have my degree in IT. I already work in IT. She goes, and the tears are coming into her eyes. She's like, I just feel I should change my path because the dance is speaking to me. It's calling me. I just can't knock it. I have to do this. And we had already decided to give her a scholarship. And so when we told her, well, we'd like to
Wow.
give you this scholarship to study here, oh, she just, under her glasses, the tears started falling. And to me, as someone who's changed paths so many times, and as an adult, I've changed paths. I continue to change paths. And again, back to that clock that these young people are on. I'm like, there's no clock. There's like, you can change your path at any time. And this girl right here, she just needed the confidence and the belief, to help her know that she can do this. She can change paths. She can become a dancer. She wants to be an educator. She wants to teach. And already I'm like, that heart of hers and that passion that she has, I'm like, oh, I already know. I can't wait to work with her. She's going to be a wonderful dance educator. So making an impact on the world, I don't know. It might just be in the people that we touch.
Yeah. And that's the greatest impact. I mean, like I'm like crying here because like it's so beautiful to see that, and people who are like listening to that voice, right? Like this is what I'm like, I can't shake it, like she told you. And I think that that's the secret to true happiness is living out what you're meant to do, not what is expected of you, but what you really feel like deep inside your bones, like what you're supposed to do. That's the secret to living a happy, fulfilling life, right?
Yeah,
And
and doing it today, like
yes,
do it today. Don't wait.
yeah.
My youngest son is a woodworker and he's only 18, but he's very talented and he wanted to work for this beautiful woodworking company down the street. But he's like, no, I think I'm just going to get a job at Home Depot because I don't want to make my passion my job because then I might, my passion might not be my passion anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, you should live your passion because that's what's going to make every day worthwhile living. I said,
Yeah,
and if you really think that you're going to burn out your passion, you'll find another passion and then you'll
exactly.
go on to that passion. So always live your passion, always.
I agree. So, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting to dance or is, a little bit curious about dance? Let's think more like, people who are listening to this podcast probably aren't young kids. So, maybe someone who never had the opportunity to dance growing up and maybe they're looking for like more recreational dance. Like, what would you tell them? Like, top piece of advice would you offer them?
Do it.
You got the same thing yesterday. I was like, full on Nike, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally do it. Yeah, again, we have our beautiful themes going on here with this podcast.
Yes.
Don't be afraid, do it, make the mess. A lot of times when I'm teaching adult students, we turn around away from the mirror
Oh.
because they're so conscious of what it's looking like. And, you've got Instagram and everybody with their all these beautiful examples of ballet, but that's not matching what you're seeing in the mirror. And I
Mhm.
want them to turn around and just feel it because that's why you came there in the first place. And I think that the adults, I, I, I feel like they should definitely stay in this little like private lesson space. I tell them like, don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to what you see in the mirror. Just stay in your little private lesson, you in your bedroom,
Yep.
as if you're a little girl. Well, I mean, you don't have I'm not a little girl and I still dance in my bedroom. But
Yeah, so do I.
so I would say definitely go for it. Sign up for the class. Don't get deterred by outside forces. Definitely dance from your heart and be you unapologetically. And dance for adults actually is really making a comeback, which I
Mhm.
love that. There are so many adult classes around, online, in person, and a lot of support for the adult dancer, which
Mhm. Yes.
love that.
Yes, we're definitely going in the right direction, I think, with that. We just need to get more people to, if they've never danced before, to realize that it's okay. Like, no one's expecting you to be, a perfect dancer. And like you said, there is no such thing as perfection in dance, right?
Yes. Yeah.
and just start and just find your path. And I feel like when we take that first step, the next step kind of appears, and then we're like, oh, maybe okay, I can go here. But you have to take that first step, and you have to be okay with it being messy in the beginning and be like, oh my God, I was completely lost in that class, but that's okay. I enjoyed the music. I had fun. Right. And
Yes.
yeah, and that's really what it's all about. And then over time, things start to flow better, and you just have to give yourself grace, right, along the way.
I
Yeah.
always my favorite quote is from Miracle on 34th Street, and the little girl, she just always chanted, "I believe, I believe, I believe." So
Yes.
I hear that in my head whenever, you're up against something. You're like, "I believe, I can believe, I believe I can do this." This pirouette, or I believe I can jump in on this class that seems a little scary, and or this online class, there's all these little screens looking at me. And that's the other thing. Nobody's looking at you. You have to
Yes,
remember
that's the
that. We
thing.
all
Yeah.
feel
I
that
always
people are
tell
looking
people
at you.
that, yeah. We're so
We're
busy
not.
looking at ourselves and trying to get the next move down that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about now you can share how people can get in touch with you? Tell us about amazing projects you have going on now, and just share it all so we can stay in touch for everything you have going on.
We definitely have to stay in touch
Mhm.
now
I
that we're all
agree.
friends.
So I should mention that Heather sent me an email. She's like, we're going to be best friends after this. I'm like, well, I agree. And we both showed up wearing blue today. So, I mean, it was written in the
We're
stars
in
that
our
we're
little, we have a
besties
little
forever.
club.
Yeah.
Um, well, everybody can find me at heatherjeanwilson.com. And from that website, you'll be able to find Ba Ba Ballet, which is the preschool dance curriculum. You can find Grunt If You Understand, which is the visualization for ballet program. And then you can also find my guest classes. I teach ballet, contemporary ballet, point, PBT, floor bar. I can even teach country line dancing if you really need me to. And
Amazing.
um and then I also offer workshops in like etiquette and character for dancers, which I feel is kind of lacking in our world today. And I think that if students had that, they would be able to better represent themselves at auditions and job interviews and things. And then I also have a ballet terminology workshop, which I think a lot of teachers need to brush up on their vocab, and students need to brush up on their vocab. I'll end with a little story about the vocab. I was teaching my 9 through 11-year-olds the other day, and they all came in all excited. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And they said, we went to a convention this weekend. And I was like, oh, yeah, how'd that go? And they said, we took a ballet class and it was so packed. And we were in the back and we couldn't see anything, but the teacher had a mic and he was using the terminology. And they're like, Miss Heather, we knew all the combinations. We knew how to learn because
Wow.
you taught us our vocab. And I was
Yeah.
like, yes.
Yes. That's awesome.
So
Very,
yeah,
very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I loved hearing about your story. And, I got emotional because I feel like, this is part of my path, right? Is to talk to people like you and hear about, the amazing things that you're doing in the world. So I'm so grateful that we had this
thank you for
chat.
having me. I'm so grateful to be here with you. And maybe you should have someone interview you too, so that we can learn all
Maybe.
about you
Yes, so I
for
am
your
going to
own
do an
podcast.
episode for this podcast where there is an episode where I talk about my story and how I got started with dance. And so lots of chats happening. And yeah, I'm
Lots
going
of
to just keep
sharing.
flowing with it and just following, where I'm guided to go next. But
I love
thank
it.
you so much. And thank you for everyone who listened to this podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, leave a review, because that's the best way to get more people hearing about this podcast and sharing the dance love across the globe. So thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you again, Heather. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
we'll chat again soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to the Dance Yourself Brave show. If today's episode got you hyped, inspired, or just made you want to bust a move, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear today's message. Sharing is caring after all. And hey, don't forget, your courage is already in you. Sometimes you just gotta dance it out to feel it. Catch you next time. Keep shining and keep dancing yourself brave.